about what we did last week, being the first day of human resource management. So who can remind us words, terminologies, definitions? What did you take up from last week that you can remember about HR? For those of us on the joining us virtually, please, you can put your responses on the chat box and I'll check them out. So what reminders, recap what we did last week? Anyone?
Some of us just joined this week.
Okay, that's fine. So just listen to those who are here. Listen to those who were here last week then. Anyone?
Yes, my takeaway last week was the fact that for the first time I knew it was the evolution of human resources management, from welfare manager to labor manager to personnel manager to human resources. I thought
it has always been HR.
From personnel management to HR.
Good. Okay, human capital.
Now human capital.
Yes, now human capital too. That's good. Human capital as knowledge or know what. So human capital is an embodiment of the knowledge, the know-how, the know what, the know why, and the care why in an organization. We gave 3 different definitions of perspective. I rather call them perspective instead of definitions. 3 different perspectives of understanding what human resource management is. Thank you, Ayomide. We are doing a recap of what we did last week. And we just had 2 recaps of describing human resource management. So can any other person give us another reminder? Anyone? We talked about human resource planning. Can anyone help us? Can anyone remember what human resource planning is? When we said it's about predicting, forecasting,
quality and quantity of people really achieve the result.
Yeah, the quality and quantity of your manpower in an organization. How do you determine how many people you need, what kind of jobs they'll be doing, what quality of people you need? When you have to think ahead, plan ahead, that's what we call human resource planning, right? The forecasting or predicting the demand and what supply of what of labor. So let's get used to using the HR terms so that there's a difference between you and somebody who has never been, who has never taken a course in HR or even had any experience. Learn those HR terms. Instead of using employees, use labor, manpower. Instead of using staff, there are words that you use that shows that, this person is in the field of HR. So learn those words and get used to using them. Okay. Who else? I'll just take one more reminders from last week. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
We looked at job analysis, very correct. Can I help us? Yes, it describes what the job is all about in terms of the content, the context, and what? One last thing. Job analysis. What's your name, please? Florence in class has helped us define job analysis. It describes everything about a job in terms of the content, the context, and one last thing about the job. The content, context, and one more word about the job. Anyone? In job analysis, the process of analyzing content, context, and what?
Title.
Title? Not really.
Task.
Not really. What else? Similarly, go ahead.
Manpower needed.
The human requirements needed. Three things: content, context, and human requirements needed. Okay, last question. When you conduct a job analysis, you come out with two outcomes. What are the outcomes? Thank you, Sunday Devil. What are the outcomes of a job analysis?
Description.
Job description, thank you, and job specification. Okay, so that was just a quick recap from last week. We are supposed to do job design, but I want us to go into recruitment because it's quite a voluminous topic. So in discussing recruitment, I just want to ask us, what is recruitment? Anyone in class, what is recruitment?
Recruitment.
Hmm? Good, hiring of labor or manpower, yes? You sound very HR-like. That's good. That's the right word. So what is recruitment? Any other definition? Employing, okay, yeah. What is recruitment? So gather employees together for a specific task. Okay, do we all agree with these three definitions? Eh? Only the first one. The second one is does anybody have a differing definition of what recruitment is? Okay, so recruitment, why all of them are, I would say the three definitions are politically correct. It's like defining the entire process: hiring, employing. Employing is more of an informal term that would be used for the contract itself, employment, right? But when we say the word human requirement, when we say the word recruitment, recruitment is the process of searching for prospective employees and then stimulating the prospective employees to apply for a job. Do you see how it's very different from the word hiring? So recruitment is a process where you search for your prospective employees and then you have to stimulate them to apply. If you don't understand this definition of recruitment, you'll always be having gaps, such as having the wrong people. But if you understand that in recruitment, you actually have to stimulate the right people to apply for a job. The next question would be, how easy or how possible will it be to stimulate? You don't want to stimulate the whole world. If there are 5 vacancies You don't want to stimulate 10,000 people. And then by the time you start screening, only 3 people are qualified. The most effective question to answer in recruitment is, how do you stimulate as much quality hires that you can stimulate so that they can apply for that job? Because they can be experienced and qualified, but if they are outside in the labor market and they have not applied for the job, then you have not gotten the right people. So the objective of recruitment is actually to search for the qualified employees or hires or candidates and stimulate those qualified candidates to apply. You see how it differs from when you just say, I am hiring or I am employing people. Do you understand? It's also a process of discovering potential candidates and then generating a pool of qualified candidates. So at the end of your recruitment, the outcome of every recruitment is a pool of who? Of who? Of who? So that you don't feel, oh, we put up a vacancy, we attracted 10 million candidates, applications, and you're clapping for yourself. No, that's not recruitment. When you're done with your recruitment, you must generate a pool of qualified candidates, not a pool of unqualified candidates. So generate a pool of qualified candidates by encouraging the qualified candidates to apply for the jobs. Now, the process of recruitment, I will run this through. It starts with personnel requisition. In a very large organization, there will be lots of departments. You may not know as HR the manpower gaps that they have in their department. So they send to you as HR what their manpower needs are. I hope you understand when I say manpower. Do you know what I mean? What their employee needs. And then with that understanding, with the requisition they have sent, as HR, the next step is now for you to locate and develop the different sources for the kind of people you are looking for. You need to identify, where can I get this kind of people? Imagine that you are passing through Transcorp and you saw on their gates executive director vacancy, apply within. What do you think of that kind of vacancy? What would you think? You are passing through Transcorp and on their gates you saw a cardboard sheet that says executive director would need an apply within.
I would think it's a scam.
You said you think it's a scam?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so, but do you think that's the most effective way to attract that qualified, that kind of hire they are looking for? Executive directors, they will be working, right? They will be checking, right? And then even if they are maybe taking a walk or they are passing through with their cars and they see such kind of vacancies, they will think it's a scam. They will think it's any other thing. And then it will even hamper the image of Transcorp. Very questionable. But I mean, if it was probably for housekeepers, you would forgive Transcorp and say maybe they've sourced every other means, they just want to. So let's switch the table. So Transcorp is looking for housekeepers and they post on LinkedIn. 20 housekeepers. They will find overqualified people. Overqualified people are not qualified people for that role, right? You think they will find it right? Do you think that people at that category of maybe housekeeping do you think that they will be on LinkedIn? Between Facebook and LinkedIn, where do you think they will be? So when you are conducting a recruitment process and that's why you analyze the job, you know what the job is. You now want to develop the source because what you are doing in recruitment is you have done a forecasting and you now have a labor demand and you want to do a labor supply. So you are looking for the right source. So if you have an amazing job vacancy and you don't target the right source, you are not going to get your pool of qualified candidates. Don't forget that your objective in recruitment is to get a pool of qualified candidates, not a pool of applicants, but qualified applicants. You want the pool of qualified applicants to be the ones to apply. Then the third process is that you will identify the prospective employees with these required characteristics, and then you develop the techniques to attract the desired candidates. If you are recruiting for an executive director, general manager position, what are some techniques you would develop to attract that level of candidates? What will you do differently? Or what will you do uniquely, innovatively? If you are recruiting for an executive director role or senior general manager role, those senior C-suites, what will you do innovatively? You post it on LinkedIn. Okay, specify the job, okay. But you seem to have a reservation towards putting the incentives.
Based on the last one, I said you mentioned something about stating everything as the job needs, but I don't think you really mentioned about salary or something. I don't know if it's salary.
What do you think? Do you think salary should be in a job description, a job vacancy?
Yes. You don't have the program. I don't think so. But the intermediate role,
Junior role. Why do you think senior roles should not have their salary?
Because I didn't tell you they can negotiate their salary.
I think senior roles have higher the salary and putting out the salary.
So I'm going to apply for a job as a senior executive without knowing if I have a better offer somewhere else. Job apply. What are you offering me? That my company does it, except toxic environment.
But when it comes to thinking about the job,
That's my point. How do I come from
How will you attract him? Don't forget that he's not walking around. The executive person is not walking around looking for a job.
Ma, please, there's so much noise coming from that side.
So you want to poach him. So how will you attract him if you don't put all your cards on the table? Nobody will, especially at that role. It is really even at lower levels that they don't care. They are ready to tell you whatever it is. But as people climb, you need to put all the cards on the table. Everything.
At what point?
At any point. From when you're putting up the vacancy. See, a lot of people waste time doing recruitment and selection because people finally get to the third stage and then you open up and they tell you that what you're offering, where I am, I'm paid twice. And you have spent, because you are hiring for an executive role, you put them in a hotel, you expended money. Through the process, and maybe it was a 2-month hiring. You get to the second month, you're offering them what you think is a great salary, and They are like, I earn more. You know, a lot of times.
Ma, please, there is so much noise coming from that side.
Sorry, it's what? I was distracted. Yes.
And I think when we have actually creativity, we are getting into anything. And then the room is not only two people in the room, the other people, 6 people, like.
Oh, that's sad. Yeah, things happen. Yes, that's sad. I mean, I understand that even in the industry, there are a lot of amateur. Yeah, so but that's really sad. And that's why we're going through this course, right? So that we don't have to be that kind of HR. It's really very sad. And I mean, just imagine, you know the name of the school. If tomorrow now they put up a vacancy and you share your experience online, it will put a limitation to them not to have the right kind of people. So HR, we must understand that you are brand ambassadors. So it's what they do. It's a culture. And they are doing it because they think people are. Yeah.
I saw it very cable applied, and then after doing the interview and everything,
so you see, they use that to attract.
And then
No, that's very bad. That's wrong. Because what you yes, I mean, if he wants to, but our legal process in the country itself is horrible, but that's wrong. They take advantage of how our system is, but that's really wrong.
Tell me how much you're going to be paying me. What do you think that you pay me this now? Let's move down.
That's that. So these are techniques that can either attract or unattract candidates, right? Because you think you're doing it to just one person, and then the person goes online, is a global community, puts it there, and the name of that institution or that establishment is tarnished. Because these times, people don't just apply. They go online to scout, they check, they verify, they go to Glassdoor, they see comments, they see reviews. Just like people are reviewing products online, people review companies and organizations. So this is not 20 years back. No. We must realize that we are working in an information age. And that information there are people that work in places that they are working there, but they say, even my enemy, I will not let my enemy come and work it, but they work there. It may not always be about the
Ma,
pay.
please, we are not following.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but there's so much noise coming from that side.
Oh, really? So we are just having a discussion in class on some factors that can that can either attract desired candidates or repel desired candidates. Do you understand? Did you follow what I just said?
Yes, ma.
Okay. So it's just the banter we're having in class, right? Just for us to have this, and people are giving different case studies of recruitments where they put up a different thing online, and then by the time they go for interviews, they meet a different set of conditions. So like I was saying, sometimes it's not just about the pay, the salary. It may just be the working conditions. There are places where they supposedly pay high, but by the time it's the last day of the month, you are so drained. You know that the blood left you. Life. People work in places where they earn so high, but they don't even have the time to spend the money. So family and friends spend it on their behalf. And they get to that point and they just make the decision, look, I would rather work for less and have a life. So it really depends. There are many scenarios, many factors that affect, retainability of manpower. Some people work in places that it was on their job that they started having certain ailments because of the job. So the fifth process after trying to attract the candidates, it is then evaluating the effectiveness of recruitment. So imagine if in his case, maybe they thought they were smart, they recruited, they attracted 100 candidates, thinking that when they now come in, they will now tell them, they put 300,000 on the JD. Then when they came in, they now told them 50,000. Out of the 100 candidates, now the executive director is seeing you as HR very busy this week. We are recruiting. But out of the 100 candidates, only 2 moved through the first stage. And then by the time you told them that story, the 2 of them said they are no longer interested. But the last 1 week, you have been busy screening. You've wasted your time. You've wasted resources. And it has shown that you are ineffective and incompetent. So you also need to evaluate the effectiveness of your recruitment process. And sometimes that means looking inward. Because a lot of times what HR professionals do is to look outward and blame labor market and say they are unemployable users. Blame every other factor without looking inward and saying, is there something in our recruitment process that we're not getting right? It could be as simple as how you describe the job and what the job really is. Let us assume it's a community job. It's a job where people will have to spend time in communities, interact with rural communities. And in the job description, you put who loves to create the best impact in the world and work with an amazing team. And so people who love to create the best impact in the world and work, they are applying. However, their perception about creating the best impact in the world is not sleeping in rural communities. They thought it was one AI tech, something that they will be doing. So your job description attracted the wrong set of people. It's not like community work is bad. But because you did not describe the job in itself, we did job analysis, the content of the job, you did not describe it, you did not get the right kind of people to apply. So you have to describe a job as it is without using fanciful words. Drop the technical jargon, drop the fact, describe the job as it is. Let people know what the job condition is so that they can decide, is this a career path I want to take or not? So this is the standard process of recruitment. We have 2 sources of recruitment. When you're done with your recruitment.
We can't hear you.
All right, thank you. We have internal sources and external sources, right? Internal sources, who understands what internal sources of recruitment means?
Within the organization, like instead of the board, about role, expected.
Okay, so when you are recruiting within the organization, thank you. And external recruitment is when you are recruiting from outside. Which would you prefer and why? What do you think? What are the advantages of internal recruitment over external recruitment? They already have the organization's experience and interest. Yes.
Motivational factor for internal workers.
Very true. It can serve as a motivational factor to those who are already on ground because they know that if they stay long enough in this organization and there is growth opportunity, they will be considered, right? So that's it reduces the length of time for training because they are not new. Maybe the training will just be focused on the new role, but not necessarily on organizational culture because they are already there. It ensures, it kind of decelerates labor turnover, so it allows people to stay longer in the organization, right? Because they know that the longer they stay, there is growth. Today they started as admin, then they go to supervisor, then they are managers. They can see a career growth, can see a trajectory, so people can stay. So what are some advantages of external recruitment?
Some outside experience and bringing more ideas because I'm always
New ideas, more ideas, challenge status quo. Sometimes you need to bring a fresh blood to challenge what is already happening. It has some disadvantages because there may be conflicts when new people come in. So the team doesn't want to work with them well because they are new and they want to prove a point. There may be all of that, right? However, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. So you need to weigh options. There's another advantage of internal recruitment when it comes to resource saving. If you are, maybe it's for a role of a manager and maybe that role is say 3.5 million naira and a supervisor was on 2 million naira. If you wanted to promote the supervisor to the manager, you're only going to be adding how much? 1.5.
So
He's already earning 2 million, moving to 3.5, 1.5. So you're only adding 1.5 to that overhead cost. Do you understand? But if you are recruiting newly, you'll be that overhead cost is the entire 3.5. So that's one advantage of moving people through, different roles, like doing internal form of recruitment.
So the external recruitment has to be paid at 3.5.
Yes. While you still have that supervisor who is there earning 2 million. So you're looking at your total overhead cost, right? Not just for this, but by the time you total it, you are taking a new role, which is 3.5, you are still having 2 million that you're paying. But if you promote, you're only adding 1 million to an existing 1.5 million. So it's just costing the organization an additional 1.5 million. That's one advantage. So there are some times that you will not even have the qualified people within the system so that there's no emotions or sentiments, because internal recruitment also allows for a lot of sentiment and conflict and politicking, biases. People are fighting for their life for a new role or for a promotion or for a transfer. So you need to weigh the options against budgets and against what you want to, We're facing someone like that now, something like that now in an organization. So we want to take a regional manager to be an in-country regional manager to become a regional manager for a specific role across 3 countries. Now, we have a team of in-country regional managers, and some of them are older than her, but she's the most qualified person for this particular role. It's a different role from her in-country regional manager role. So we are faced with, we know that there's going to be some tussle, right? We're faced with, how do we manage the sentiments that will come up from the other regional managers? Because they will see it as a form of promotion. Even if it's not promotion to say, but they will certainly see that move as a form of promotion. Of course, you can't, even no matter how hard you try. So one of the ways we are trying to work around that is increase everybody's pay so that everybody is the same level, right? But assuming we were not considering her for that role, there will be we're not talking about increasing pay in April. But now, because we want to manage that trouble, that will hopefully, I don't even think it will manage it, but hopefully we should be able to stem the tide.
Because you're so obvious.
Yeah, probably by the time they start having the misunderstanding and they hear from it, even when you tell employees don't disclose your salary, they still get to, by the time they hear each other, they'll be like, okay, after. Yeah, so we hope that that takes care of it. I've just been thinking through last night how I'm even going to start communicating it to my regional managers. This is the time you need there with somebody to fight your dirty fights. But I have to be the one to make that announcement. So I'll sort it out, whatever comes up. So these things happen is the fight between the balance between internal recruitment and external recruitment. So whatever, we're not here to say one is better than the other, but whatever situation, you have to weigh your options and take whatever is the best solution at the time. Now, if you are doing an internal recruitment, there's a process that you need to follow so that it's objective. Now, because internal recruitment brings a lot of internal conflict, unintended consequences, you want to manage it and ensure that you are a step ahead. And the best way is to follow a recruitment process. Review present internal availability against vacancy. Be objective. Be certain that the competence exists within the system. Don't just do an internal recruitment because people have stayed for 10 years, 15 years. So it's now like an entitlement. Even when they are not qualified, you are like, the person has stayed longer. So, can the person do the job? Over the years, has the person shown competence? So review availability against vacancy. Follow your recruitment policy. If for that role, your recruitment policy says the candidate must have a minimum of a master's or a minimum of a this, follow that process if that's the standard for internal recruitment. Don't jump the gun because now we now. I've known Folake since in fact, Folake was the one that did my onboarding. Follow your recruitment process. If the recruitment process says for this role, the person must have 8 years experience doing the job, follow your process, your policy. Then the third thing is communicate the vacancy to employees. Communicate. Why this is a bit of a trouble for me is, as in what is happening in my organization, I was discussing with my CEO and we're just trying to brainstorm how everything is going. We have decided that it's this lady. And so, she was expressing her concern for the sentiments that will come up. And then I asked the question, did our global HR manager, was this vacancy posted online? And then the CEO said no. I was like, I did some, like say in my network, my cycles, I did some postings. And this lady, because I know she was very competent, I sent it directly to her, assuming or presuming that this was one of our global roles. So our global HR personnel manager has already done the needful. Now hearing that it was not posted online, as in it's not in the public, it's, big problem. Very huge problem. If it was posted in the public, it's like everybody saw it. If you did not apply, so now it's really going to look like I had personal interest in. So it's going to be a big issue. If she doesn't keep her mouth shut, that it was me that sent the. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to deal with, but each time I think about it, I keep seeing the bigger trouble that will come up. So communicate vacancy to all employees so that everybody sees it. People should not go to work, go home on Friday, then come back, Joy is head of department. When it happened, how it happened, the process is a shock. They're just going to create trouble. So let the vacancy be communicated to all employees, encouraging all interested employees to apply. Then the final framework is ensure objectivity is your guiding principle, because you want the job holder to resume that job position and work smoothly, right? Is a guiding principle. Ensure objectivity is a guiding principle.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
We talked about project plan. In the case where the job specification requires, let's say, an employee with minimum of second class offer, and then let's say 4 years experience in the particular job. Then you have an employee that has 4 years experience in the particular job, but degree 4 shots to you after the degree. How do you go about it?
I mean, you need to, so when we didn't finish job specification, right? Okay. So in job specification, it states the minimum requirement that the job holder must possess to perform the job. You state the minimum requirement. Then you go further and categorize those requirements into essential, desirable, and contraindicators. So experience and academic qualification, maybe one is going to be essential, one is going to be desirable. Do you understand? So it depends on what you want to weigh. Somebody may have a BSc and have a 20 years work experience. What do you want? Is it his BSc certificate or his MSc certificate, or do you want somebody who has the practical experience doing the job? It depends. Yes, you have to further categorize, your job specification into essential, desirable, and contraindicators, so that it helps you put different factors into different boxes, and you can know that is, those factors that are essential, critical to the success of the job holder, or the job itself, not the job holder. Okay? Essential, desirable, and contraindicators. Contra.
Okay, contra.
As in factors that that will not make the job holder perform well. For the job of an accountant, who can tell us some of the contraindicators? Contra. CON, yes. Who can say some contraindicators for the job of an accountant? Anyone? You are recruiting for an accountant and there are some behaviors or experience or that when you see the candidate, it's a no. That's what contraindicator means.
The face value.
Face value.
Everyone told us that was eating too much. Like wanted tension.
Well, okay, like the HR, she can't be an accountant, right? She will clear the account. I mean, it's true. So you put so she may come for an interview where she thinks about her practical knowledge on numbers, and then you give everybody lunch and tell her to leave, and then you watch her how she wants everything to herself. You didn't ask her any account-related question, but just from that practical interview, you can tell that this is a greedy person, and this person is going to take all company funds. So you can even see how that action tells you that as a contraindicator. The way you do one thing is the way you will do everything. It's just different contexts. So you want to check for integrity, right? So you want to check for factors that show or indicate that this person does not have integrity. So as much as doing your hiring process, selection process, you are looking for the behaviors or the right indicators for qualified candidates. You are also looking out for behaviors or indicators that show that this person is not qualified. You know the good from the bad, and you also know the bad from what? The good. You must always create that balance. So we looked at internal source of recruitment. Some form of external source of recruitment is direct methods, when recruiters go to institutions directly. Indirect methods, when you advertise, or even third-party method, when you have to use recruitment agencies. Now, we said recruitment is a process of searching for prospective candidates and stimulating them to apply. So there are factors that can affect recruitment. One of the factors is employer's public image. How do people see you how do people view the company out there? It can affect employers' recruitment. If maybe if we go to these horrible experiences that they have shared in class, they know the names of the organization. If they see their friend or their acquaintance or somebody in their social space apply to that institution, do you think they will encourage them? So the employer's public image, the working condition can affect recruitment. Another factor that can affect recruitment is the HR network. Your network as a HR professional, the number of people you know, the kind of people you know. You see, we looked at the 5 or 6 process of recruitment, right? A lot of times, reality is that you don't have the luxury of time to go through each of the process stage by stage. A lot of time you don't have, people are leaving, you have to fill in within 2 weeks, you have to fill in within 1 week. You don't have the luxury of time to do, then this is the process. So sometimes you just want to call and say, do you have referrals? I need to fill in for this position now. At that point, the only thing that will come to your aid is your network. So if probably it's an accountant that is living and the accountant is living on a bad note, and you think that because the accountant is living on a bad note, you burn the bridge, it will also affect you. Because sometimes the executives come to HR and they say, shoot him, kill him, fire him. I don't want to see him first thing in the morning. And then you go in that spirit, you slap him, you kill him, you fire him. He goes, you have burnt that bridge. And you just never know when you will need that bridge to go to the other side. So just like we tell the employees, when you're leaving an organization, don't burn the bridge. HR, when employees are leaving, don't burn the bridge. Because how many accountants do you know? You only need to know one accountant who knows 5 other accountants to get an accountant. Do you understand? So you need to grow your network. I know that as HR, we want to hide our occupation and our career from everybody, especially from family and friends, because they think that because you are HR, first thing Monday morning, all your cousins should have a job. Yes. It happens. So a lot of HR professionals will hide their identity because they don't want disturbance. So I don't know how you can balance it, but you need to build your network because you need people to quickly come in, and you may not have the luxury of time to follow due process. So build your network as HR. Employer and management culture can also affect recruitment, and then the competence of the HR personnel can affect recruitment. The behavioral bias and the competence. It's important that organizations train their HR. SMEs, train your HR. Don't just pick anybody to be HR. CEO, boss lady, boss man, don't be your own HR. Because what happens that a startupper, a CEO, a boss lady thinks that what is HR is not hiring and firing. What you now spend your time doing instead of going out there to pursue business, every day you are settling employee issue. What he wear, what did he not wear? If he came late to work, if he did not come late to work, if he did this, his hair is like this, then why are you talking to this staff like this? And then 1 year down the line, no business growth because you have focused the time you should spend growing your business to doing HR. So I always advise startups, don't be your HR. Get a HR. So you can focus on growing your business because you think it's easy until you get in there and you realize that you're not doing HR work instead of going to grow your business. So when you get your HR, ensure that your HR is trained professionally because they are your face, they are your brand. Some time ago, a company online was brought down by social media critics and their reputation almost tarnished because their HR put up a live video during an interview session. She's female and her candidate was a male and the candidate complimented her perfume. And then she came on social media and was insulting the candidate for complimenting her perfume. And then internet in-laws took over the situation. And of course, because this is a HR who always puts up everything online, she has mentioned the name of her company, you know, and so the whole world was, they left her and faced the company.
Why? Because she accepted a compliment. No.
She was insulting the candidates who complimented her perfume. HR bias. She has to make a content.
And you the process was online.
No, video there. I don't know if the other person got the job, but she lost her job. Yeah. Because the company has to protect themselves. So, I mean, at the end of the day, HR personnel are human beings. And because they are human beings, they have their biases. That's why you need to train people so that they are professional.
They may not fire her.
No, they did fire her. They came to apologize publicly. Oh, you mean that they will just say they fired her, maybe they will. Well, we don't know the true story. Yeah, I agree. You know, but then that was the company's reputation on the line. So you need to train your HR personnel. It may just be that maybe your last boyfriend was a Yoruba demon, and so every CV that has Shegun Adekunle, you can never. It happened. Look, these are real. That's why we call it human. We call it human resource. I always tell people, do not take away the human from the human resource management. It happens every day. And so one of the ways to deal with this, take away these human elements, is to automate your process. People go through an applicant tracking system. Computer sorts out everything. There's a software that sorts out screens, you know, and then maybe the final stage, there's now a human interface. Because this human interface is somewhat just, sometimes there are a lot of sentiments that come with it. So when you are done with a recruitment, the outcome or output of that recruitment is a pool of qualified candidates. And then afterwards, you go into the process of selection. Selection is a process of choosing qualified individuals who are available to fill positions in an organization. It involves careful screening and testing of candidates. I don't know why this is not there. It involves careful screening and testing of candidates that have applied to the organization. So the ideal selection process could be a job of opening that attracted 250 resumes. And out of the 250 resumes, only 4 to 6 will be interviewed. out of the 4 to 6, only one person will be hired. That's kind of the ideal thing that happens. Does it look fair? Why do you think it's not fair? I hope our online participants can still. Why does that not look fair? An opening attracts 250 resumes. Out of that, only 4 to 6 will be interviewed. Out of the 4 to 6, only one will be hired.
It's not fair because out of 250 resumes, it's just 4 to 6 persons that they selected. At least it should have been 50 or more than, or 100 at least.
Yeah, but they can't control the number of applicants. How?
But you said 250 resumes.
So go ahead. Go ahead. Can you control the number of applicants?
No, you can't. But you said 250 resumes.
Yes.
And 4 to 6 will be interviewed. That's where it's being unfair. At least 100 people should be interviewed.
Okay, you are saying that at least 100 people should be interviewed. But even if there's an interview for 100 persons, it's only one person that needs the job. Only the vacancy is for one position. One.
But at least give other people benefit of doubt. Interview them before you now select that one person.
So that's that was how they got to 4 to 6 now. Because they need just one person. I mean, they screened every other person out, 244 out.
Okay.
And they got only one person. I think that maybe we would have been coming from the place of what can we do to attract, once we put up a vacancy, let us assume that means these 4 to 6 people were the qualified people. And we still have to screen out of the qualified people. So what do we do to ensure that when we put up a vacancy, only 4 to 6 people will apply? Yeah, in the part of the world where people apply by faith.
50 jobs.
Yes.
I mean,
well, before you apply, I think you're supposed to have understood the requirement.
There are people that are not checking out those things.
you just apply by faith. Yeah. It happens a lot in this part of the world. People apply by faith. They see that this job is for a 15 years experience and their pastor has told them they can do all things. Favor. Oh, it does. I agree.
The salary adjustment is 2 years experience. I'm not sure.
I mean, this is what you have to deal with as a HR professional, right? And softwares help us manage this so that you're not having to go through all of the 250 resumes. The softwares are screening out, and then you can deal with a minimum number of qualified candidates, right? So the objective of recruitment is to attract a maximum number of qualified candidates to apply. The objective of selection is to reject a good number of those who have applied and to choose the best out of the available candidates. Recruitment is also not very intensive. Anybody can put up a vacancy, but selection requires highly specialized techniques so that you can spot and know the best. The outcome of recruitment is an application pool. The outcome of selection is finalized candidates who will now be offered the jobs. So let's further look into selection. We have different selection tests: personality test, IQ test, aptitude, performance test, resume screening, and interviews. Resume screening is a process of determining if a candidate is qualified for a role based on either their education, experience, or any other information captured on their resume. When you are conducting a resume screening, you must still have your job description and your job specification into those further categorization, right? When you are carrying out a resume screening, define your minimum requirements, your preferred requirements, make sure that you have attracted the right candidate, be specific about everything. Don't say young people are encouraged to apply. A 50-year-old man will apply because he's young at heart. So be specific about, we have seen something in this HR. Be specific about, spell out exactly what you're looking for, right? So that nothing is left open to interpretation. So that you don't just have unqualified people applying, wasting your time and also wasting. Articulate what the ideal candidates should look like prior to the search. Then consider skills outside your minimum or preferred requirements. Sometimes go outside the box. Sometimes keep the benefit of that. You just never know. It may be 10 years work experience and you see this 5 years work experience person, or 5 years work experience and you see this 4 years work or 3 years work experience person who has done so much. Just go outside the box. Sometimes you just can never tell how you will get the right kind of people. A lady recently, I was reading a post on LinkedIn, and this lady said the day she lost her son, she was scheduled for an important interview. So she thought she was strong, she braced up, and when she went for the interview, they just asked her, "What's your name?" And she started crying. It was easy for them to conclude anything. You're not ready for interview, you are this, you are that. The interviewer allowed her. After she finished crying, gave her a cup of tea without asking her why, let her go home. Called her again the next day. Ask her a few questions. Before the third question, she started crying. They did it 3 times. It was the third time that the interviewer said, "What's the problem?" And that's when I told the first day I came for the interview, I lost my son that morning. So they didn't give her the job based on, but because she could now share her pain, they allowed her go through the pain. After a few weeks, when she was stronger, they called her in for an interview. They asked her questions and she answered well and she got the job. So sometimes you really need to not take the human out of the human resource management because you just never know. A lot of organizations have missed best hands because they concluded too early or even too late. It could be anything, right? So when you are conducting selection process, interviewing is also a part of selection. That's why it requires specialized skills. Anybody can put up vacancy, but not everybody can select, not everybody can interview, it's a skill that you need to learn, even how to ask the right questions. I'm happy that she was able to identify that if an accountant role and somebody is there and is wanting to have all the food, she was able to link that person is also going to want all the money and will likely not have that integrity. So interviewing is also an important selection tool, and it's a process of wanting to get information to assess the potential for a job that an incumbent is being considered for. The objective of interviews is to provide, obtain additional information from the candidates, because you're done with the CV screening, right? And one more thing I wanted to mention for CV screening. When you are doing hard copy CV screening or even soft copies, always screen against your job description and your job specification. The pitfall that a lot of recruiters fall into is, let us assume you are screening 10 CVs. You get to the third CV, perfect CV, you keep it aside. You get to the sixth CV, perfect CV. You now start screening the other CVs against these two CVs. No. You should screen all of your candidates against the job specification so that there is standardization. So it's a pitfall that one can easily fall into when doing CV screening. They are the same. I think one is a French word commonly used. So they are really the same. They're the same. Objective of interview is to give candidates information about the job, about the company, about their. On this side of the planet, interviewers get offended when a candidate does not know so much about an organization. How will the candidates know? It's not working yet with you. The last time you updated your website was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, you were manufacturing tomato. That is what is still there. Now you are manufacturing onion. And the candidate checked your website, and what he saw was what? He now comes for an interview. So tell us, do you know what we do? Yes, we do tomato. You get angry. Meanwhile, you did not discuss with your IT to update your website. Interviews are also at the right time to give candidates information about the job, the process, everything the candidate should know, so the candidate can make the right decision. It's also to assess the basic suitability of a candidate. We have different types of selection interviews. We have one-on-one interviews between the candidate and the interviewer, by two or more interviewers when a candidate is interviewed by more than one interviewer, by panel of selection, more than maybe a representative of the employer, not the employer interviewing the candidate. Sequential interview is when there are a series of interviewers stage by stage. And then panel interview consists of two or more candidates and two or more interviewers. Each of them have their advantages and their disadvantages. We also have interview classification, structured or directive interview, or unstructured or non-directive interview. Unstructured interviews are interviews where questions are asked as they come to mind. But structured interviews, the questions are written, the expected responses are also written. And so the candidate has to try to respond in line with what has been written. Unstructured interviews help you go deeper, help you build rapport, help you find out more about the suitability of that candidate. Structured interviews, on the other hand, helps you save time. Because for unstructured interviews, from 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the candidate is interesting, 15 minutes is interesting, 1 hour. But structured interviews is straight to the point. It depends on what you want to achieve. You get it. We also have what we call selection interview. It's the general kind of interviews that is common, where the objective is to predict how the candidate is going to perform in the future. So you have to be very tactical with that kind of interview. Then we also have what we call stress interview. Stress interview is when the applicant or candidate is made uncomfortable by a series of rude and awkward questions. The objective of a stress interview is to test the candidate's tolerance to stress. You have anger. If you have anger issues, right? Are made uncomfortable by a series of awkward and rude questions. It really depends on what you want to achieve. It may be that the job really requires somebody that can manage, stress, or maybe a job that requires working with what do they call it? Children who are dyslexic, it could be that. It could be very high, well paying, but requires a lot of tolerance and a lot of patience. I mean, even schools should conduct stress interviews.
Yes.
Because we are beginning to have teachers who are rogues and touts. So I advise schools include stress interviews. Although Nigeria took a hard problem, somebody will be nice until he comes into this country, and then you lose it. So, what are some?
And can you say say HR internship role, for example, right? Is that a scenario where someone can conduct this stress interview?
Ideally, I mean, no. For an internship role.
HR internship.
No. Why? Why do you want person to manage stress as an intern? What happened to the main HR person?
Yeah, because, yeah.
I mean, a lot of crazy things happen in the HR industry in this country, right? Even when people ask you under pressure, you want to ask them to define the pressure before they kill you before your time. When you answer yes, then they kill you with all sorts of jobs and always remind you, but you said you can handle it. You said you can work under pressure. That's not, it's very unethical. And labor laws are very weak anyway. And even if you want to sue a company, our legal process is also, so it's sad. But it's about the candidate knowing what they are worth and what they want. It's about that candidate knowing what they want. So there are principles for interviewing. The first principle is that the physical setting for an interview should be private and comfortable, because you want to give the person the room to be free, respond to your questions, and allow for building of that rapport. The mental setting should be one that builds rapport. The interviewer should be aware of non-verbal behaviors. Don't be one that asks a yes and no question. If you ask a yes and no question, you will get yes and no answers. So you have to be very strategic with your interview process. And now, depending on what the job demands, let's assume it's for an administrative executive role that requires high level of orderliness or a due diligence, a process person. If you ask the person, do you consider yourself a process person? What would the candidate answer? Yes. If we ask, do you have integrity on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your integrity? 10, 9, 8. Why are you too far? Okay, what's your integrity? 9. 8.5. Tested. Okay. 9. 8. 10. 9. 8. 8.5. Those of us saying 8.5 want to be humble, right? I mean, it's either you have integrity or you don't have integrity. You can't be a little bit pregnant. A little bit pregnant. It's either you see why you cannot ask certain questions in certain ways. You will get the answers that's not right. So how do you ask a question that borders about integrity to check for integrity without asking, do you have integrity? That's where the specialization comes in. Maybe the first day of interview, and it depends on the role. Maybe it's a job that really requires high level of integrity. So it becomes a critical factor. Maybe it's for an accounting job or you know, it depends. So the person comes for the first stage interview. You ask the person what's the person's club, football club, and the person says Arsenal, and maybe that period they are playing European, what is it, European League or so, Champions League. And so if that person comes for another interview, coincidentally, you set it when you know that that person's club is playing. Yes, and then you give the person nice coffee, lunch. Say, today we're gonna, just, and then put the person in a room that there's TV. Maybe there are two candidates. One say Arsenal, one say Man U. And they put them in two different rooms, and you are watching from the other side.
Yes. You wait there like a waiting room.
Like a waiting room, but you're watching. And then candidate A, before the match finishes, tie is here, shoe is here, But candidate B, who said it was Man U, has slept from the beginning of the match. Who has integrity between two of them? The one that has pulled, because he pulled all his things out of the excitement of the match. He told the truth. But the other person who slept off, obviously, he doesn't love football. Or he lied, because when he came to the office, he saw Man U, and he went on Google, and Google said when you go for an interview, study the environment and compliment the interviewer based on the environment. So we don't need to ask who has integrity. We know just from a football match who has integrity. It happens. Huh? It depends on the role. There are certain roles that you need to be that deep and elaborate. And there are different ways. This is not the only way. It could be as simple as a candidate, people come for interviews and you want to check level of honesty, and you give them, say, 500, go to the malam beside the office, buy tin milk, and it's 450. You know it's 450. They go there, malam gives them 50 naira, but they come to you feeling that you don't need 50 naira in your life. So they give you your milk and they don't give you your 50 naira. You already know that this is a thief. Do you understand? And they take it, right? So you need to be creative and innovative to get the right. If not, you won't get the right. So depending on the job role, somebody says, yes, I'm a process person, two people, and the job really requires, you want somebody that is really a process person. Do you love cooking? Yes. Do you love cooking? Yes. Can you cook jollof rice? Yes. Both of them, they love cooking. They can tell me how to cook jollof rice. Candidate A says, I go to market, I buy rice, I buy tomato, I buy pepper, I buy meat, I come home, I boil my meat, I boil my rice, make my sauce, I mix my rice in my sauce, and I fry my meat. Is that not jollof rice? And I serve it in a plate. Is that jollof rice or not? Candidate B says, I go to the market, I first of all find out who I'm cooking for, a diabetic or non-diabetic patient, so that I know the quality, the kind of rice I'm picking. I go for this kind of tomato, I go for bell peppers, shongo pepper, because they do this, and then I come home, I boil my meat for 15 minutes, I fry my meat, I parboil my rice for 10 minutes, because it's a long grain rice. Gives you step by step. They will both come out with sweet jollof rice. And it may be that candidate A jollof rice is sweeter, but you are looking for a process person. And you can see naturally between the two of them in describing the process of cooking jollof rice, you can tell who is more of a process person than the other. More of a detail-oriented person. Without asking, are you detail-oriented? Because the answer is going to be yes. So that's why interviewing is more of a specialized skill. You need to ask the right questions to get the right answers. Okay? So that's why the mental setting should be one that builds rapport, because you want to engage people at very high level conversation. So you want them to be comfortable. It's okay to crack a joke. It's okay to tell them, don't be nervous. We just want to get into each other's lives. I'll tell you a bit about myself, just so people are calm and they are not nervous. Plan for your interviews thoroughly, reviewing your job specification and your job description. Very important. Look at it, because you may be standing before, or you may be sitting before the most beautiful or the most handsome person you have seen all your life. It happens a lot. And then you get distracted. So always remind yourself of your job description and because if you hire based on bedded gang, fine teeth, and beautiful shape, and that person does something later in the company 3 months down the line, who will they call? HR. And you will curse the day you saw that person. Okay. So determine the specific objective and method for interviewing. Not all interviews must be traditional and I sit on this side, you sit on this side. Interviews can be over lunch. Who will pay for it? I don't know. So you need to be very creative. Make a decision only when you have every data available. Avoid decision based on first impression. Give people benefits of doubt. Conclude your interviews tactfully, making sure that the candidate does not leave feeling too elated or too frustrated. Don't give people a wink. You did well, you did not do well. Don't give. Or we call you first thing Monday morning, you will hear from us. And you know the person did not do well. Don't be, that's very unprofessional. Maintain some form of written record of your interview during your interview or immediately after your interview, because you will have to justify who should move to the next stage. And you don't want to get to the point of defense or justification and you're having to call your colleague to remind you who wore pink skirt and who wore black tie. So that's why during the interview, you write down, how well each of the candidates have performed. Never take the human away from the human resource management. Very critical. So you would agree with me. I mean, we cannot cover all of the case scenarios for interviewing. So it's an art. We cannot even train everything in class because you meet different specific scenarios at each time. You can only improve in your interviewing through practice. So join your HR team, even if your job is to be helping them arrange the CVs, just so that you can start learning how to ask the right questions. Any questions on interviewing? Okay, I'll leave us to read up learning, training, and development, so I can take a few minutes to talk about performance management.
Sorry, that has to be said. You said
What? I said join your HR during interviews.
Join us, the applicant.
No. As a HR professional, so that you learn how to ask the right questions.
May I have a question, please?
Please go ahead.
Okay, Ma, you said when a person has not performed well, like, what are you supposed to tell that person? Because the person will be hoping that he's going to get the job.
Okay, so you should
yeah.
have a feedback mechanism.
Okay.
Where probably you're sending people who did not perform as expected mails. So they are not necessarily having to give people feedback
at that
on at the interview. You don't want people breaking down and crying because they need that job badly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So you can inform them later.
Yes, you can inform them later. I mean, one smart way organizations do it is they will tell you in the mail you receive, they will tell you already, okay, this is the second stage. If you are successful, you will receive a mail to the next stage. If you do not receive a mail within 2 weeks, it means you are not. So they will tell you ahead, so that if after 2 weeks you have not received the mail, you know that you are not successful.
You are not qualified. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right.
So for organizations, right, that have, should I use the word like class or name, like they are already know, and they're having this recruitment exercise, and maybe um, they need people for, we say, principal managers or assistant general managers, like not just close to the top bracket. And because of who they are, like how society or others perceive them, so they don't want to fall behind, they don't want to drop down in their standard. But now, because of those standards, they are not able to get the target or like the qualified people they really want.
So they have to review their own standard. Maybe they are setting very high bars. They have to look into what their requirements, what does the job require, and what are they setting? What they are setting as a standard, is it what the job requires?
It's not that I'm like, no, because let's say because you are transport people, executive, I don't just allow the common one because he has academic, like sometimes I'm seeing candidates that are well experienced, like even when I see this so thick, 3 pages, 4 pages. This is supposed to be even close to MG set or something like that. But based on, should I say, the person has not been able to access, should I say, the opportunity or person just in common class when he's young. So organizations and society, because they are placing themselves so high. So we don't.
I really think that it's really about, you see, different organizations have what they are looking for. Sometimes organizations may be looking for people who have worked, you may be seeing a job title, say admin executive or admin manager, but they're looking for people who have experience, say, in a particular industry. But you just see the job title and you think but they're looking for people who have had experience in, for instance, the development sector, right? A program manager or a program department, they'll be looking for people who have had experience in the development sector, not just in any sector. And so it may be very critical for them. So it depends really on what their standard is.
So what if we're not able to see?
So they have to review their own standard. They have to review it. And so that they can get the right, they have to adjust, they have to review what they are setting. I think it happens sometimes you see some vacancies, they will tell you first class, and they realize that they interview 5 first class, and they are wondering how did they even come out with the first class? And it dawns on them that they interviewed 10 first class people, 10 second class or upper or third class, and they realize that it's not as we thought. Maybe these first class people should be really in the schools, being in lecturers and researching, but in terms of the actual job exposure, the resilience they are looking for. So they have to change that their job description and say, look, it's no more an essential attribute to be a first class person.
Why most organizations, let's say they'll be looking for fresh blood, like young people, like young graduates, but if they will be saying 10 years experience for.
No, I tell you solemnly, no, it is the candidates that never go to online searches where they will see fresh graduate opportunities or 1 year or 0 years. Search, if you do your search engine well, you put in the right prompt, the job offers that will come out to be fresh graduate job offers. But if you just put up any, then you'll be having 5 years and above, and then you'll be feeling bad. It's not the fault of the organization, it's the fault of the candidate. You're always applying to, yes, they're not strategic. So let's talk about performance management. I mean, so we've gone from talking about the functions of HR to human resource planning when we looked at employing organizations, ensuring that you have the right number and qualified employees. And then we've talked about analyzing the job. So we've looked at analyzing the human beings. We've also looked at analyzing the job. Now we want to look at performance management that analyzes the quality of the job that the employees are doing. And that's where performance management comes in. Performance refers to what an employee does or what an employee does not do on a job. And for any organization to remain competitive, employees have to align what they are doing with what the organization needs them to do. So in performance management, we look at setting metrics, setting terms. Performance assessment is a process where the data about an employee's past and current job performance is reviewed, when you're assessing how well an employee has performed in the past and currently. Performance appraisal is when you assign scores to indicate different levels of employees' performance. Because how do you know an employee that is contributing more than the other? How do you know an employee that is more hardworking, results-oriented? You need to assign scores. Performance evaluation is used to describe the extent to which an employee performs their job effectively. And the performance management is an integrated process that starts with setting the goal for the employee, what you expect the employee to do, and then how you're going to evaluate the employee and how you will reward the employee. So that's performance management. It's holistic. Now, the aim of performance management is to ensure that employees' performance support the strategic goals of the organization. I hope we know that organizations are no longer looking for employees who will do their best. We don't want employees to do their best again. No, just do what is required. It's like what we define as best is not what employees are defining as best. So don't do your best. Do what is required. And in appraising employees, you are not appraising employees because they are doing their best. You are appraising employees because they are doing what is required. So if what is required, if they are not doing up to what is required, then you know they've not done well, right? So when we look at performance appraisal, we're looking at a way of reviewing an individual employee's performance in an orderly way. There's a formal process, there's an informal process. Informal process of performance appraisal is when you give feedback to employees day to day. As they're performing their job, you're giving them feedback. But the formal process of performance appraisal is when you set a period out to say, in this period, we'll be appraising all staff. That period could be half yearly, quarterly, or at the end of the year. Which one does your organization do? Which time of the year are you appraised? During promotion. Do you work with the government? With the government, okay. Because that's very typical then. Yeah. All right, great. So when does your company do appraisal? Okay. So what about you? Don't. Okay. What about you? I just want to know what time frame. Does anybody have when their company do or where you worked before when they do their appraisals?
I work for government. We do annually happen towards the promotional exam. But right now, federal government are changing to PMS, performance management system.
Yes.
That will enable us to be doing it
quarterly. Okay. That's really interesting. I wonder if you would ever work with the government.
I think it will work.
System based.
Because civil service, they value their promotion.
True.
So it is not mandatory that if you don't do it,
no promotion. No. Is it voucher they gave you? Was it a voucher that you were given? All right. So we have informal and then we have the formal. And the formal is a systematic way you define the KPIs, you appraise the employee, and then you reward the employee. So in a formal appraisal process, you set the performance standard, and performance standard is set from job description, right? So you look at the job description of every employee, and then you set the performance. A job description in the job of a call center agent. Who can tell me one job that would be in the JD of the call center agent? No, job description, not requirement. No, the job description describing maybe one receive calls, yes, receive calls, right? So that could be a job description in the entire JD of a call center agent. Now you take that job description, that task, and you set it into what we call, reframe it into a KPI. Maybe by stating the number of calls he must attend to in a period, and then setting it as a standard. Because if you have 3 call center agents, at the end of the month, this one does 5, this one does 20, this one does 15. Everybody will feel, I've done my best. I killed myself, my organization this month. Meanwhile, 200 customer called. This one did 5. This one did how many? 20 and did 15. When we add it up, does it sum up to the 200 customers that called? It means that a lot of customers were not responded to. But if you ask them, they sweated blood. This month, we work. Meanwhile, 160 customers have not been attended to. They didn't even pick the call. But if we set a standard and say, every month you must attend to a minimum of 50 customers, or say 100 customers minimum, you are setting it as a performance standard. And then you can now appraise based on that performance standard. Do you understand? So if you don't set a performance standard, then people will not have a goal they are working towards, and there will not be uniformity.
So that the KPI.
So we are getting to performance appraisal is the formal way of evaluating this performance standard you have set. So you have now set a performance standard that these 3 call center agents, for calls, you must respond to a minimum of at least 100 customer calls. Performance appraisal is every month we check, did you do 100 customer calls? Did you do 100? Did you do 100? That's performance appraisal. We may want to check it at the end of a quarter, half year, or depending on the period.
But most federal I think they do it annually.
Don't be using government. They are not a typical.
We don't even do it. Just for the purposes of promotion.
When I check my companies, and I think I do our projects, so it's more of punctuality, respect, and how to keep up with the project.
I mean, so it's so they have a very poor performance management system. Now, number of customer calls may not be the only performance standard for the call center agents. Ability to resolve customer complaints. So we don't just want people who will pick customer calls. We want people who will also be able to resolve customer complaints. So we track it. What gets measured gets done. What you don't measure does not get done. So we track it. How many were you able to resolve? How many were you able to resolve? So they are committed to resolving. Out of the 100 customer calls, you must resolve at least 80%. So if it is the 25th of the month, she's checking, have I resolved how many? Have I called how many? So you see, because there's a standard, there's a measurement, and they are checking. Self-checking, manager is checking them. That's what we call a performance management process. So you set the performance standard and then you communicate the performance standard. Because if you don't, they will think 15 is fine, 10 is fine, and 20 is fine. So you communicate the performance standard so everybody knows that we have a standard we are working. Even when it comes to punctuality, you need to set a standard, resumption time, closing time. If you don't set a standard, what happens? Yeah. So you need to communicate the standard so that people don't abuse the system. Then you measure the standard, which is where the appraisal comes in. You choose the method of appraisal because there are different methods of appraisal. Then you compare the standard. So at the end of a period, you are going to compare what the employees, how they actually performed against the standard that has been set. Do you understand that? So that you compare the standard, you discuss results and come up with some action plans. Some action plans could be career change, promotion, salary increase, incentive, trainings. In a system where there is no form of performance appraisal, what happens is this person constantly does 20. This person constantly does 15. This person, one day, he will ask himself, what am I? We all earn the same. And over time, you see his performance will drop because there's no standard, there's no form of reward or acknowledgement. So performance management is very critical so that you are calling people up to a particular level of standard. So we'll look at modern methods of performance appraisal. The first method we'll look at is management by objective. Management by objective is when subordinates and superiors sit down together and define a set of goals common to them. The advantage of management by objective is because both employee and subordinate and manager set their goal together, subordinates will be more accountable. Because I was the one that set up that, okay, I'll be coming to work 9 a.m. every day. I was the one that said that, okay, I'll be able to respond to 100 calls. So because I set the goal, I'll be more accountable. And then it gives me a sense of belonging, that I belong to this organization. There's what we call behaviorally anchored rating scale, BAS. Behaviorally anchored rating scale helps you take care of qualitative KPIs. It's easy for you to say, make 100 calls, bring 50 customers. Behaviorally anchored rating scale, BAS. You see KPIs that are numerative, like you have to bring 100 customers, you have to bring 50 million, you have to come to work at 9 a.m. It's easy. There's a number attached to it. But there are other performance standards that we call qualitative, such as respect. How do you appraise that this person is more respectful than the other person? How do you appraise something like patience or integrity? They are behavioral. So what you do is that you define different levels, define what each of that behavior, the standard behavior is. Like how I define respect may be different from how you define respect. Manager A may define respect as somebody who takes her bag every day. Manager, somebody who can come, good morning, sir. So you see the term respect, right? So you want to set a standard by defining how does the organization. Now, when you define that category classification to it, and then put different numbers, like you can have 5 as an exceptional performance, 4 excellent performance, 3 fully competent or average, 2 marginal performance, 1 unsatisfactory. Is defining the behavior that you want to see, and then putting classification to it and putting that evaluators and the description. Do you understand? The next type of performance appraisal is what we call 360-degree. In 360, is appraised by themselves. You appraise yourself. Your superior will appraise you. Your subordinates will appraise you. Your peers will appraise you. Appraise you. That's why we call it 360. Do you understand 360? Cost accounting method is when you appraise employee based on money into the company. Not all roles necessarily bring money in terms of cash. So cost accounting is not really for all positions. Now we've looked at, as we round up, we've looked at all the appraisals. The next thing I want to look at quickly is problems that can come up from performance appraisal. Now, if you agree with me, this is about human beings judging other human beings, and a lot of factors can play in. One problem that can come up from employee appraisals is what we call halo effect and horn effect. You appraise an employee 10 over 10, 10 over 10 because of one good character or indicator. Maybe this employee comes early. So punctuality 10 over 10. Ability to communicate 10 over 10. Ability to respond just because of one punctuality that is coming early. I'm no longer interested in any other thing. Honey, an employee because of one bad indicator. Maybe he comes late. You now believe that because he comes late, he doesn't respond to mail, he doesn't do his job, he doesn't do this, so you downgrade the employee. Central tendency effect is when some appraisers or evaluators or managers, they don't want to be seen to be too good or too bad. So everybody 5 over 10. Every indicator 5 over 10. Every job 5 over 10, because you don't want to give 10 over 10 and you don't want to give 2 over 10. So that people will not say you're wicked or you're too kind.
That is what.
Central tendency. Personal prejudice is when the evaluator does not like an employee for any reason, religion, culture, tribe, any reason. And so because of that personal prejudice, you appraise the employee poorly. I don't want to say employer, the evaluator. It may be the line manager who is evaluating. Clone error is when you give better ratings to employees who are like you in behavior. You're a feminist, is a feminist, you're a Boy Scout. Clone error. Then speed over error is when you continue to downgrade an employee for performance errors in past rating period. It was stupid last year, it will be stupid this year. Or it's always stupid. One of the ways you overcome spillover error is that you ensure that after every performance appraisal period, annual period, you take away employee record entirely, and you establish it as a policy that must be done in line with the KPIs set for the new year, or for the new period. That people are not referencing past periods. And these things happen in performance appraisals 100%. One of the ways we also overcome this by using softwares, because computers don't have this sentiment, right? But the most ideal form of performance appraisals is when you sit down with the employee and you're having an appraisal meeting so that you can support the employee, understand why the employee is having gaps, and support the employee to do better. And computers cannot do that. So it's about having that balance. Do we have any questions on performance appraisals or recruitment? Okay, with that, we'll come to the end of today's class. We'll meet next week. Thank you for your time and your attention so far. Okay, for those of us joining virtually, we are done with the class. I will just give a few more minutes. If you have questions, you can ask on the chat box. Yes, you are taking attendance. So type your name, your full name, I think, and your phone number on the chat box so that it's taken as an attendance. Mary, go ahead, please. Mary, you have a question?
No, it was a mistake, ma.
Okay, thank you for your time, okay? So the next class is data analysis. Yes, data analysis. So you can wait for the class if you are taking data analysis.
Hello, ma.
Yes, go ahead.
You said we should type our name where?
Yes, in the chat box.
In this Google Meet or the WhatsApp group chat?
All right, so the next class is data analysis.